When love and courage become the only way out. My journey to freedom. I remember that back then, my life felt like a never-ending cycle. I'd wake up early, work all day, come home tired, and still have to deal with a family that seemed oblivious or uncaring about everything I did. They'd ask for money as if it were my obligation to pay for every detail of their needs, even when I could barely save anything for myself. The most painful thing was feeling that, despite all my efforts, there was no respect, no recognition, only demands. I was everyone's foundation, but inside I was already crumbling. Still, I tried to convince myself that this was normal, that being a family man meant silently enduring the burden. My name is Marlon. Today I can say it out loud with a pride I didn't have before, but at that stage in my life, being Marlon meant being invisible. I was 32 and working as an assistant at a printing company downtown. The salary wasn't high, but it was steady, and so I was seen as the guarantee of the house. My mother, my brother, and even more distant relatives came to me to resolve any financial emergency. I couldn't say no, and each time I gave in, it felt like my identity faded a little further. Deep down, I was afraid of being rejected, afraid of appearing selfish, and so I accepted the role of breadwinner, unaware that I was being sucked dry. The routine was always the same. Wake up, work, deliver money, listen to complaints, and go to sleep. There was no room for my dreams, my personal life, much less self-love. I'd had a few superficial relationships, but they all ended because I could never put myself first. People sensed my fragility, my excessive dedication to what others expected, and simply walked away. I felt trapped in an invisible prison, built by my family's expectations and my own inability to assert myself. In the silence of the night, I wondered if this would be my fate for the rest of my life. Despite all this weight, there was a small flame within me that still lingered. I had a special taste for art. I'd always admired drawings, tattoos, and graffiti. When I walked downtown and saw the tattoo studios, I felt a mix of curiosity and envy. It seemed like another world full of colors, different people, freedom etched on the skin. But I convinced myself it wasn't for me, that I didn't belong there. I was just the tired worker, the obedient son, the responsible brother. I never saw myself as someone who could truly live a more authentic life. This contrast between what I lived and what I desired was what ate me up inside. It was in this scenario of suffocating routine and shelved dreams that something unexpected happened. I met Monica. She was completely different from everything and everyone around me. A free woman in control of herself who spoke with a confidence I had never seen before. She owned a tattoo studio, surrounded by artists, and exuded authenticity. Our first contact was simple, almost casual, but it left a lasting impression on me. I didn't know it at the time, but that encounter would be the turning point in my life. From that moment on, everything would begin to change, and not without pain, conflict, or tears. Our first meeting happened by chance. I was leaving work and stopped at a coffee shop near the print shop, something I rarely did. I felt too tired to go straight home, and for some reason I couldn't explain, I decided to give myself a brief respite. It was there that I saw Monica for the first time. She was at a nearby table, leafing through a notebook full of drawings. Her hair was loose, her gaze firm, and an energy that seemed to fill the entire room. I, always shy, just watched in silence, until she, without ceremony, looked at me and asked if I liked tattoos. It was as if someone had pulled me out of invisibility. I answered awkwardly, but that was the beginning of a conversation that dragged on until I lost track of time. From that day on, we started seeing each other more often, first in cafes, then at her own studio. She showed me her designs, told me the stories behind the tattoos she did, and I listened, captivated. With Monica, there was no pressure, no judgment, just presence. It was as if she had seen something in me that I hadn't even known existed, and little by little, I began to allow myself to experience that connection. I laughed more, talked more, dreamed more. But at the same time, a shadow grew within me, the fear of how my family would react. I knew they wouldn't accept such a different, independent, upper-middle-class woman, a tattoo artist. To them, it would seem like a forbidden world, and I could already anticipate the criticism. It didn't take long for the predictions to come true. The day I told my mother about Monica was the beginning of a conflict that seemed endless. She immediately disapproved, as if I'd committed a sin. She said a woman like that wasn't right for me, that I was letting myself be fooled, that she only wanted to use me. My brother, who had always depended on me financially, was even harsher. He said I was throwing away my responsibility, that I was under a spell. It hurt to hear all this because, deep down, I still needed to be accepted by them. And, at that moment, the pressure made me wonder if I really had the right to live a life of my own. Even with the criticism, I continued seeing Monica. Sensing my hesitation, she never pressured me. She simply said, "Marlon, life is yours. You need to choose which side you want to be on, the side of those who hold you back or the side of those who encourage you to truly live." These words echoed within me in my most difficult moments. While I felt guilty for defying my family, I also felt a thirst for freedom that grew with each passing day. It was as if two opposing forces were vying for control of my heart. On one side, the submission that kept me trapped. On the other, the courage that was born alongside her. The situation intensified when my mother began treating me like a traitor. Every time I came home, she would cast accusatory looks, insinuating that I was abandoning my family, that I had changed for the worse. My relatives kept saying I was being corrupted. This consumed me because I didn't want to lose my family, but at the same time, I couldn't deny how much being with Monica made me feel alive. It was in this impasse that I realized my life was about to turn into a silent war. And for the first time, I would have to decide whether I would continue living for the will of others or whether I would finally have the courage to live for myself. As the weeks passed, the pressure at home became unbearable. Conversations were always filled with accusations and emotional blackmail. My mother told me I was ungrateful, that she had sacrificed her entire life to raise me, and now I was throwing it all away for a woman I barely knew. My brother, in turn, directly demanded money from me and said that if I started spending it on a couple's life, he would be destitute. I felt crushed by all these words. It wasn't just the judgment, it was the way they stirred my guilt. Deep down, I still carried the belief that my worth lay in providing for others. And this belief kept me trapped like invisible chains I couldn't break. I began to doubt myself. Sometimes I'd look at Monica and wonder if they were right, if I was deluding myself. But then she'd smile, talk about her dreams for the studio, about the freedom to be who she was, and something inside me would rekindle. But then, in the solitude of my room, I cried. I cried because I felt I didn't have the strength to face my own family. I cried because it seemed unfair to have to choose between the one I loved and the one I'd always been taught to protect. It was as if I were on an internal battlefield, torn between two lives that couldn't coexist. The lowest point came on a Sunday night. We had just finished family dinner, and, as usual, my mother brought the subject up. She said in a harsh tone that if I continued with Monica, I would no longer be welcome in the house. My brother reinforced that if I didn't help financially, he wouldn't be able to pay the rent. I remained silent, trying to control my tears. Then I went upstairs to my room and spent hours staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was losing everything. It was the first time I seriously considered giving up on the relationship, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand the war anymore. That night, I felt like my entire life could crumble in a matter of days. I felt small, voiceless, as if my existence were reduced to meeting never-ending expectations. The pain was so intense that for a moment, the thought of giving up on everything, including life itself, pierced me like a bolt of lightning. But at the same time, something inside me screamed that I couldn't erase myself like that. It was as if there was a forgotten part of my soul crying out for help, demanding I find a way out. And even at rock bottom, that tiny spark kept me from giving up completely. It was in this moment of darkness that a quote from Monica came back to me. "You have to choose which side you want to be on." I understood that, as painful as it was, I had to take a stand. I could no longer continue trying to please everyone and destroy myself in the process. The pain of losing my family was immense, but the pain of losing myself was even greater. Realizing this was like turning on a light in the darkness. I didn't know exactly how I would do it, but I understood that the next step would be to fight for my own life, for my freedom, and for the love that would give me back my will to live. The day after that suffocating night, I woke up different. There was still pain, there was still fear, but along with them came a new feeling: determination. I could no longer continue living on autopilot, serving as a voiceless provider. I grabbed a quick coffee, went to work, and during the shift I wrote down on a piece of paper all the things I wanted for myself. They weren't great material achievements, but small freedoms. Having my own money, choosing how to spend it, being able to go out without having to explain myself, and above all, being with someone who truly saw me. When I finished, I realized that none of it was absurd, that I only desired the basics of any human being: respect and autonomy. It was at that moment that I decided I would never back down again. That same week, I had a definitive conversation with Monica. I opened my heart, talked about my anguish, about the weight of guilt my family placed on me, about the fear of losing them, and at the same time of losing myself. She listened patiently and in the end said, "Marlon, no one can live for you. If you continue to let them dictate your choices, you will spend your entire life in debt to something that will never be repaid." Those words pierced me again. I felt I had to choose. But for the first time, I realized I had someone by my side, strengthening me, not just demanding more of me. It was at that moment that I decided I wouldn't give up on her. The first concrete step was financial. I knew that much of my family's control over me came from money, so I started setting boundaries. When my brother asked for money to cover the rent, I said I couldn't help every month anymore, only in truly urgent cases. He rebelled, yelled, and called me selfish. My mother cried, saying I was abandoning the family. It was painful. I felt like the worst of children, but deep down, there was a strange sense of relief. I had finally said no, small to the outsider, but immense to someone who had always lived trapped in pleasing others. Then came the emotional step. I stopped apologizing for every choice I made. Before, I'd even justify the time I spent with Monica as if I needed permission. Now I simply left and returned without explanation. This change further affected my mother, who accused me of becoming someone else. And in a way, she was right. I really was transforming. For the first time, I felt like I could live for myself, even though I carried guilt and fear of the consequences. It wasn't easy, but with each small victory, my confidence grew. With Monica by my side, this transformation gained momentum. She encouraged me to believe in myself, to see value in my own choices. One day, I summoned the courage to ask her to tattoo me. It wasn't just a drawing on my skin, it was a milestone. I chose something small, discreet, but one that represented freedom. When I saw the ink on my arm, I felt that, for the first time, I had left concrete proof that I was choosing to live my life my way. My family hated it when they found out, saying I was losing myself, but deep down, I knew I was beginning to find myself. Over time, I realized that the conflicts with my family weren't going to magically disappear. They continued to criticize, question my choices, and pressure me emotionally. But now I had learned to set boundaries without feeling guilty. It wasn't easy. I often felt a tightness in my chest, a longing for the acceptance that never came. Still, there was a new clarity. I could live with their pain without destroying myself. This difference gave me the strength to continue investing in what was good for me, to fight for my own happiness, even if not everyone understood. My relationship with Monica deepened during this process. I discovered that love isn't just affection or complicity, but also mutual support in the face of external adversity. Each challenge we faced together strengthened our connection. We began to create small rituals, moments that reminded us of what truly mattered: respect, trust, and freedom. I felt complete in a way I had never felt before. For the first time, I realized that my life didn't need to revolve around other people's expectations, but rather around conscious and authentic choices. Furthermore, I began investing in myself. I took courses I'd always wanted to take, challenged myself to learn new things, and even sought therapy to deal with the traumas of my family history. With each step, I felt like I was recovering a piece of myself that I had lost for years. It wasn't a linear path. There were setbacks, nights of anxiety, and moments of doubt. But each challenge I overcame reinforced the certainty that I could live fully and independently without sacrificing my essence to please others. Today, I can look back and clearly see how much I've changed. I still deal with my family's expectations, but now with autonomy and determination. I learned that there's no complete overcoming without facing fear and guilt. My life transformed because I chose to face discomfort, because I allowed myself to prioritize my happiness. I learned that self-love isn't selfish, and that freedom is built step by step, even if it hurts. This journey taught me to respect my limits and value myself like never before. If I could summarize the lessons learned from this entire experience, I would say that true overcoming lies not in eliminating all pain or conflict, but in learning to live despite them. I learned that it's possible to love someone, pursue dreams, and still carry scars without them defining me. Today, I am Marlon, a more confident man, aware of who I am, what I want, and what I can achieve. I still deal with the shadows of the past, but the light I lit within me is greater. I found myself again, and I know that despite everything, my life is now mine, and that's why every battle I've faced is worth it.